Good afternoon. Today we're looking at pandemic-proofing your technology for associations. COVID-19 has tested even the most prepared associations like never before. In this new era of uncertainty, associations need pandemic-proof tactics to stay connected to members and deliver benefits in new and innovative ways. Now more than ever, with all of society operating from home, technology solutions and virtual engagement platforms are the lifeline between associations and their members. Discover today how savvy associations are adapting to this current reality. Hello, my name is Howard Pollack. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Sales at CommunityBrands, and I've been working in and for associations for the last 32 years. I'm excited today to be joining you, albeit remotely and via recording, but I am looking forward to the Q&A session following this recording. So let's walk through the agenda briefly. Obviously, we're going through the introductions right now. We're going to talk a little bit about COVID-era challenges for associations, and more specifically, some of the challenges that you guys are facing as customers and some of the solutions that we've provided jointly with our organizations to solve these issues. So very specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about in-person events moving online, the issue of membership retention in the light of COVID-19, and finally, refunding registrations. As more and more organizations are needing to cancel on-site events, how are we handling that in bulk? And finally, we'll talk a little bit about accelerated digital evolution, as that's an important element in this as well. So let's talk a little bit about the COVID-19 as a public health crisis. Putting it in personal view, I remember back around March 16th, CommunityBrands told all of our staff to go work from home for 2 weeks. We thought that the 2-week lockdown was going to be good enough and then we were going to get back to normal. Well, as we can see today, we're into month 6. We're all still working from home, and it's obviously been so much longer than the 2 weeks. So what we want to look at is the way that we've addressed challenges that may become the new norm. So again, very specifically, an example that I like to use is, as I've made my way back out into the community and gone to a restaurant because I'm really tired of eating at home, I see these contactless menus. And so the concept is to stop the spread of germs and other things. People are going to no longer hand out menus. They're going to have a QR code on the table that you can scan with your phone, and it'll bring up the menu. I think it's kind of a cool technology. I'd take advantage of that even when we do get back to a normal, whether it's new normal or regular normal. So really, what does this look like for associations? In my opinion, I think there's challenges, and from challenges, engage opportunities. So what things will change in the future and become the new normal? What lessons will we keep with us? I'm going to challenge you guys to think about that. So in addition to these challenges, we also have racial and cultural divides. We have political divides. We have a very tumultuous environment right now. We're not going to get into that today, but in my 54 years being on Earth, I don't think I've ever seen a more divisive country. Add on to that the fact that Mother Nature's kind of pissed off too, right? Up and down the West Coast, there's fires burning. I'm working with an organization in Oregon, and they've had to put everything on hold because actually they're evacuating right now. So we're thinking about all of them and all of you guys in these times. So what does this mean? What we've seen is that we've seen canceled conferences and events. A common challenge we've heard is strictly digital versus hybrid events. What are we going to do there? And also responding and reacting to quickly find a way to make up for the lost revenue and to find the right technology to do that. So from a personal perspective, I serve on the board of directors of the National Fragile X Foundation. Every other year, we have a 4-day conference that's split up over, it's a 4-day conference. And what we've done now is we've split that up over several months. And each of those activities is focused on a specific track, so we can delve more deeply into it. And in some cases, this is more successful and could be more successful going forward. So in 2 years from now, when we go back to hopefully an on-site event, which everybody wants to do, that networking, that family orientation, we're going to also have a hybrid approach where we're offering it up remotely and digitally. We're going to increase revenue and increase attendance. We also see memberships at risk. membership renewal cost. People are losing their jobs or they're being furloughed, and they're also assessing their expenses. And so one of the things that might happen is they're going to drop their membership for the time being. We're seeing low member engagement, working from home adjustments and interruptions. I have 3 dogs lying at my feet right now. Hopefully nobody's going to knock on the door or the phone's going to ring where they freak out. So we have those kinds of things happening today, and probably can all laugh about that today. I think certainly with these online events, people have a lot more empathy for what people are going through here. And then, of course, as we talked about furloughs and layoffs, associations are having to do more with less. You guys are already wearing tons of hats. Now, compound that by other things like creating reliance on digital. So organizations now have to move conferences and summits and annual events online. That's going to take the IT staff a shift in their priorities to actually support that. So we're going to talk about several customer examples of challenges faced at this time. But first, let's set the stage with the technology that these customers are using. At CommunityBrands, we have enterprise-class AMS systems built on Salesforce CRM and Microsoft technology. You've probably heard of them: NetForum, Aptify, and Nimble AMS. In fact, several of you might be using these products today. Each product serves a purpose in the marketplace depending on your business needs. So again, Aptify, NetForum, Enterprise, and Nimble AMS. So let's dive a little into Aptify, and then I will share a story. So Aptify is going to provide many things. I'll focus on 3 quick points. Aptify will provide the utmost in flexibility. Our system is built on a flexible platform and is highly configurable. The system will grow with you. And if sometimes organizations outgrow their membership management system, you're not going to see that with Aptify. You've got the ability to upgrade, to add modules, and also stay on the cutting edge without ever needing to rebuild the core system. And finally, Aptify is going to provide you with painless upgrades. The flexibility allows all of our clients to exist on a guaranteed upgrade path, which is super important. Many of you know Reggie Henry, our friend at ASAE. He's been running Aptify now for close to a decade. Feel free to reach out to him and talk more about that. So, what did Aptify solve? What we're seeing, and one of the problems we're seeing, was with in-person events canceled, that our clients were utilizing Zoom more and more to engage members. And they needed a way to create deeper insights and a seamless webinar creation. So Aptify said, we're going to develop an integration with Zoom, allowing the webinar creation, registration, and attendance data to be automatically pushed from one system to another. So how does this work specifically? When a product is actually created in Aptify, a webinar is automatically created on Zoom. Now, when that registration order is placed on Aptify, the registration will also automatically happen in Zoom. And finally, when the webinar finishes, we're going to take back into Aptify an attended or no-show flag so that you can run your reports directly out of Aptify and be able to market appropriately to those members and non-members. The second example we're going to talk about is NetForum Enterprise. So let's talk a little bit about NetForum, and then I'll share a story. NetForum provides over 30 out-of-the-box modules. These are powerful revenue-driving modules built by association industry experts. There is no price per module, you get them all, and there is no hidden fees. Predictability, especially in time of COVID, is super important to associations, as it is always. NetForum Enterprise was voted #1 in customer satisfaction in a 2018 AMS market study amongst the enterprise competition. And finally, if you are an organization that does high dues processing volume, we have advanced accounting and dues processing. So organizations like AICPA utilizes NetForum and takes advantage of these features. So what did NetForum solve? So members were canceling registrations for in-person events due to COVID-19 in high volume, and they needed a way to process this in bulk instead of a manual way. So this was developed pretty rapidly in response to COVID around the end of April. The system was getting overwhelmed with the number of cancellations, and it was also a highly manual process. So customers needed a way to handle cancellations in bulk and refund or credit customers. NetForum Enterprise Customer Support saw a trend and responded to the need. So in partnering with our customers, we listened to their feedback and we responded, trying to help them with unusual and difficult circumstances. So the first phase was to bulk cancel. The second phase was to allow that bulk cancellation and return the money and or create a credit on account. And if we then reached out to our members and said, if you wanted to create a credit, do you also want to make that a donation? So it was in response to that need as well, and it was highly attractive to our organizations. The third example is Nimble AMS. So Nimble AMS is the most preferred member management system today on Salesforce. And while we aren't the only Salesforce-based AMS in the market, we feel the difference is in the team and the support you get, as well as the architecture. So a little bit more about the architecture. Every single customer is on the same AMS version. That's different than the Salesforce version, which gets auto-upgraded. We actually stay in sync with Salesforce upgrades, ensuring no customer is ever left behind. That's going to save us and you time and money, because when you call in with a support ticket, we don't have to ask you what version of Nimble AMS you're running. We know you're on the latest and greatest. In addition, because we are built on the back of and the foundation of Salesforce, which is the #1 CRM in the world, we're going to provide you with continuous innovation. Things like Nimble Communities, which are an extension of Salesforce Communities. We really have created an association lens on a very powerful platform. So the specific example here is that we worked with the Marine Corps Association and Foundation on predictive analytics and business intelligence and artificial intelligence. So there were, the organization was having over 1,000 lapsed memberships each month. And they didn't really know why this was happening. And so through the use of predictive analytics and business intelligence, we were able to identify on a customer's record exactly the high-risk members that were going to potentially not renew. And so through the use of this, we were able to reduce lapsing memberships by 25%, again, using Nimble AMS and AI. There was a 50% reduction in dues processing time and reporting time, and this saved over 77,000 active members annually. This came up to speed very quickly, and people like Jacqueline Baird and others at MCAF have been super excited about how quickly this rolled out and how effective it's been. So finally, I will talk a little bit about CommunityBrands. So we've talked about the CommunityBrands AMSs, the 3 that we talked about today, Aptify, Netform Enterprise, and Nimble AMS. But we also provide affiliated products that prove member value and have a value proposition to organizations. Things like learning and training, a career center, event technology. So we're not just going to AMS, we've got lots of other features, and we'd love to talk to you more about these. Finally, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank all of you working for and at associations that are on the front lines today. That could be fire, that could be police, that could be doctors, nurses, any organizations that are servicing a membership that is on the front line of our crisis today, whether that be COVID-19, pissing off Mother Nature, or anything else that might come out today. Again, thank you sincerely for all that you do, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
So Howard, thank you very much for that very informative presentation. You know, when we're working with some of our own customers, integrations seem to be coming up all the time now, either integrating with something new like a Zoom or WebEx, and then of course some existing integration enhancements. So as the organization's business owners, what should they be thinking about before they go down this path of either enhancing an existing integration or pursuing a new one?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the opportunity to participate in this remote session. We really greatly appreciate it and are fully supportive of you guys and what you're doing here. Appreciate the follow-up questions. So integrations are always an interesting topic. And I think that we need to be looking at, from a business owner perspective, a couple of things. The first is, obviously, the business owners are going to be using that data visibly and in reports. So they should be thinking about a couple of things. The first thing is timing. How quickly do they need access to the data? And then the second point is volume. What is the volume of data you're looking to bring in? So let me group those two together and talk about kind of the types of integrations we think about when talking to business owners and even IT. So we really see three types of integrations. The first is a synchronous integration where you've got immediate and fast actions. You're going to look to enforce a single serial transaction. The second is an asynchronous integration where the actions shouldn't block the rest of the process, meaning that the process and the duration is of lesser concern, not an overnight, but maybe minutes instead of seconds. And then finally, and the third is kind of batching, where you're going to take and process records and transactions in batches. These tend to be higher volume. You don't want to weigh the system down, and the accessibility to those batches could be overnight. And so when you're thinking about those types of transactions from a volume perspective, you know, the day-to-day operations of the business owners are completed in the third-party system. The business owners maybe don't need all of that data from the third-party app. So we want to be considerate of what data they need coming over in the integration. Another important point for business owners is how will the data actually be used in the central system once it's brought in? How should users see it? What users should see it? And what sort of reporting will it be used for? Will this data actually trigger other data or be used in automations? Another important point is the frequency of use. What's the frequency of that data? Using it daily would direct the integration to be very frequent, maybe synchronous. While if the use is quarterly, once a year, rarely, the integration can be vastly different. And of course, different business owners are going to have a different point of view, or at least complete the picture of expectations. Maybe like a hands-on doer role may require that data integration to happen daily because it's used to complete their day-to-day job, while a department manager or C-suite role will most likely have very different needs. They want to see it maybe within BI or dashboards versus detail so they can view it with KPIs and engagement.
Great. Sounds like there's a lot of decisions to be made on the business side instead of just saying, oh, let's just hook up Zoom and see what happens.
Absolutely.
So where would the IT partnership or function, what should they be thinking about? Should they be helping out between those three different types of synchronous, asynchronous, and batch? I mean, what role do they really play in this integration conversation?
Yeah, so I think IT really needs to be aligned with the business owners. They need to understand what those needs and requirements are from the business owners, and that will drive some of the things that they're going to be thinking about. Really, there's probably a handful of options here IT should be addressing. One is, you know, potentially a manual import, like a CSV or flat file import. You know, with CommunityBrands, one of our products is on Salesforce. So in that particular application, we've built a point and click integration tool where we can streamline integrations with Salesforce and Nimble AMS. Of course, we've got the standard API integration, you know, looking at, again, what data needs to come in, and we cut that across all of our products. And then, of course, internally, and this kind of leads into maybe some other topics that people want to talk about, which is how do you address, you know, integration as a platform rather than these one-offs. But you know, pre-built integrations that exist. You know, obviously we've got a lot of products within the CommunityBrands portfolio, and we want to make sure that all those products integrate together. And so we've done some pre-built integrations where we can simply turn those on, integrations between our learning management and our careers and our event tech all the way into the AMS. And then, of course, you know, as I kind of alluded to, this integration as a platform, we've done some pilots with MuleSoft. And kind of done a proof of concept where we can use that third-party application where you write the integration to it and the third parties write their integration to it, and it's a kind of a black box in the middle. They can then parse the information, which is really, I think, the wave of the future here, is having that independent third party that can manage all the different integrations back and forth. I also think that IT needs to be thinking about the security of the data and looking at it from multiple levels. Who should actually access that data all the way through to implications of privacy, data privacy across multiple systems. So these are things that IT needs to be concerned about and thinking about.
Great. Yeah, I know, you know, we're kind of geeking out here a little bit on the integration steps and what to be looking out for, but the other thing that sometimes comes up is this stigma that sometimes is attached to these integrations, especially when I talk to leaders in the C-suite about, oh, an integration doesn't always break with an upgrade or some enhancement. They're always telling me that the integration seems to always break. Is there another alternative to maybe mitigate that as much as possible, or try to get rid of that stigma of, the integrations constantly are breaking with upgrades or enhancements?
Yeah, and that's really an important question and comment and concern. So let me start by talking about, more modern technology today really is more stable. And so there should be less of this concern or this stigma about integrations that break. However, there's still going to be work to be done by both us and the client and potentially the third party to test. Testing is super important. You've got to make sure that during these upgrades that things are going to work as planned. Unfortunately, we can't really control the upgrade methodology and approach used by third parties. We can only kind of set the level for ourselves. So again, testing time is critical to ensure the systems work together. But I think you raised the point of, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, is this concept of integration as a platform where you've got the third party black box that you're writing the integration to. And if all the parties agree to work closely with that, in this case, MuleSoft, which we've been playing around with, and you mentioned, I think you've mentioned in the past Zapier is another one. We have done an integration to Zapier with Salesforce and Nimble AMS, and we're looking at it on others. But we'd like to try to centralize and standardize on one, in this case, probably MuleSoft, because then we're saving time and effort and money writing to one and making sure that that one works all the time, rather than trying to support multiple integrations as a platform.
Okay, great. So just maybe switching gears a little bit, Howard, we like to think that we're helping our customers, achieve and excel in a space we call Association 4.0, which is really how are organizations leveraging and thriving in this era of Industry 4.0, which is characterized by big data, Internet of Things, robotics, artificial intelligence, blockchain, all those different things we hear out there that's enhancing every day. So what is CommunityBrands doing, and what are they seeing in their own research lab about how to leverage those things that are in Industry 4.0 to help associations really thrive in this era?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's interesting. My history with associations is that they tend to be a little slower to the technology than maybe the for-profit world, but really things are happening so quickly that you've got to address these things, and whether an association is going to pick them up immediately or at least start to understand them, it's our responsibility to educate them on these things, and I know you do that in your book. But we're really leaning into these innovative technologies because we really feel it's going to change the landscape of how associations operate, both internally and with associations, customers, and members. So we've embraced these changes, and we're trying to take a leading point of view on these. So innovation is definitely key here. So let me go back to an example of one of our products, Nimble AMS, built on Salesforce. So Salesforce obviously is very innovative, leading technology, and Nimble customers are able to take advantage of these new technologies today with great success. So let's talk about a couple of them. Business intelligence, so Tableau, Einstein Analytics, these things could be used by just adding a license and then plugging them into the system. We've also built integrations with association-centric applications like Gravitate's Nucleus and Association Analytics Acumen products. From a service perspective, associations can take advantage of live agent chats and chatbots using Salesforce Service Cloud. With simple configurations, associations can use this technology. Now, associations are probably, if they're not using it in their own website, or if they're out surfing the web or doing something, or trying to buy a refrigerator freezer, which I'm trying to do now, which is virtually impossible because the Global Chain Alliance is broken. But chatbots come up all the time, virtual agents, and this is the wave of the future, is freeing up association staff to utilize the technology and take advantage of it. So we're looking at those things too. We've got some clients that use it today, some of the chatbot stuff. I think that's going to grow. And then of course, artificial intelligence. There's an entire suite of AI functionality, from pre-built functionality to tools for administrators and developers. Predictions, predictive analytics. We're looking at leveraging that to predict on basically anything in your AMS, maybe members that are at risk of not renewing, members or customers that are good candidates for a certification program, members that would be good candidates for a committee or volunteer leadership. So we're looking at those things. I will definitely say, and you kind of mentioned this blockchain, I think that's probably where we're slowest. That's a little bit more into the future. I know they're talking about it and investigating and trying to figure out what the for-profit world is doing there. But from a security perspective, from a payments perspective, that's going to be absolutely integral to success.
Great. Yeah. So it would be exciting future here when we can leverage some of these technologies. So Howard, I know you have some great deep experience, working with the association, industry, and community, and have probably met and dealt with a lot of association executives and leaders. Are there any common traits that leaders in the IT area function or even in the C-suite that have in common that help any implementation, whether it's a whole, full AMS implementation or upgrade or enhancements, that go smoothly versus maybe for those organizations or folks that have experienced the not so smooth implementation? Are there any common traits that favor the smooth implementation?
Yeah. So let me share a quick story. Back in my early career, I worked directly in associations, 2 different associations as the director of membership. In my second job, we were in the process of replacing our IBM System 36. Kind of dates me, just so you understand a little bit about how long I've been doing this. And we were looking at one of these new modern technologies. I'm not going to use names because that's not fair. But my boss at the time was the number 2. It was maybe a 35 staff organization, higher education association. And I was the director of membership, but I had always kind of flirted around with technology. It was interesting to me. And so I wore 2 hats. As the membership director, I was responsible for the membership database. And so again, responsible for the System 36. And we hired a consultant, and we eventually picked a system, and we were getting ready to roll it out. And I said to my boss, okay, great. How do I go about setting priorities for this? Seems to be a big job. I'd never done one before. He hadn't either. And he said, well, why don't you do your membership stuff during the day, and then at night you can do the IT stuff. And I thought about it. I said, okay, well, are you doubling my salary? Because really I'm doing 2 jobs here. And he said, no, not at all. Well, I mean, eventually it became a successful implementation, but it probably went way over budget and way over time because we hadn't identified a specific team and gave them the responsibility and alleviated them of their other responsibilities. So I would say that's kind of the number one thing, is you've got to create a team that's focused on this, whether you're hiring an outsourced third party like yourself to help project manage it. That's an absolute necessity. But from a common traits perspective, I'd say communication is absolutely vital, internal and external. Decision-making, right? Don't get stuck on something. Don't redo things the way you've always done it, right? That's kind of a pitfall where associations will say, well, we've always done it that way and we need it in the new system. Well, do you really? And finally, empowering your individuals that are part of this process to make decisions, giving them the authority to make some of those decisions and driving through. So I think that those are probably some important leadership traits and common ones where we see successful implementations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from in our experience, there's 4 things that probably need to be in alignment. That's your people, process, culture, and technology. If that not in line, it's going to make any implementation tough for everyone.
Yeah, agreed.
As we close up our session here, Howard, what are some of those common pitfalls that associations seem to always fall into when they make that decision of, okay, I need a new AMS or I need a new CRM, and they just need to move away from their current one? What are those common things that we need to be maybe thinking about or taking under consideration before pulling that trigger?
Yeah, so I'm sure you and I could probably come up with a list of many possible pitfalls, but let me share three so we can be fairly succinct here. The first is underestimating the association's commitment of time and energy. You've got a partner in this large move, and your AMS vendor's there to work hand in hand, but it is a partnership, and there's work really to be done on both sides. So the association needs to recognize and commit time and work to make this a success. I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, the idea of hiring an outsourced third party to help with that. Associations don't replace their AMS every year, and so they're not practiced in it. You've got to reach out to groups like .org to make sure that there's the experience there and guidance there, and they can also sometimes be the referee between the AMS vendor and the association decision makers. So there's going to be peaks and valleys during a project. There's also regular work to do, so above and beyond their day job. So you've got to take that into account. Executives need to fully support their staff in this endeavor to make it successful. That's one way to avoid a pitfall. The second is that the launch of the new AMS is really just the beginning. It's not the end. And a new AMS can be transformative to the association. So the association's going through a digital transformation, and the ripples of change continue long after the launch date. And so you want to make sure the association continues to be empowered to do more with a modern AMS. So don't just stop because the AMS is launched. Really take advantage of it and think of it as the beginning of a long-term successful relationship, not only with the AMS vendor, but also with the technology and with the database. And I think the final point I'd make is that change is hard. The association has to pay very close attention to change management. Don't underestimate the impact of this change. Also understand the drivers and incentives for the association staff to embrace that change. This should be at the heart of your consideration at each stage of the implementation project, as well as long-term after the AMS launch. Change can be, can be hard. I remember back in my early days when we were looking to make some serious change, I read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I think that's what it's called. Something with cheese and moving it, but it's quick read. If you haven't read it before, check it out. But the concept is that you should embrace change, not fight it.
Great. Well, Howard, hey, thank you very much for this great content and great advice. And thanks again to CommunityBrands for your support. And don't forget, everyone, there is going to be live Q&A this afternoon. And also don't forget to use the chat and the question and polls here, and we'll get your questions answered as soon as we can. Again, Howard, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.